creating sustainable jobs, entrepreneurship, giving the people the opportunity to make a living out of an enterprise, was actually one of the best ways to heal the world, because then the opposite of poverty for me is not, wealth, it's dignity.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching from. This is another exciting episode of The Adventures, and I am Kunle Olufemi, your host. As you know, on The Adventures, we seek to bring you the stories of courage and vision behind the brands and the organizations that you interact with every day. And by so doing, we hope to inspire you to achieve success faster than some of us did. Some of them did, because we believe that by telling their stories, by sharing some of their pitfalls, you'll be able to take learnings from them and be able to avoid some of those pitfalls such that you're able to achieve a level of success faster than they did. And today is not going to be an exception to that aspiration, as we have another exciting guest for you in the studio in the person of Mr. Wole Odetayo. Now, ordinarily, the way we do it on Adventures is that I tell you a little bit about our guest and about the work that they are doing, and then I allow them to, tell us a bit about the work that they are doing. But in this case, I think the best I can do is to say that our guest for today is exciting, and there are many parts to him. And I do not think I will be able to do justice to talking about any of them. So in that case, I will rather allow him do, talk about all of the works that he's involved with, and then we can take the conversation from that point. So please welcome with me, Mr. Wole Odetayo. Hi,
Thank
Wale.
you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Good afternoon, Mr.
Yes,
Kunle.
thank you. And please, but Kunle is the name. I know both of us will struggle a little bit because we
Yeah,
are used to calling people,
yeah.
Mr. and all that. But Kunle is fine. I'll also try to keep it
Wole,
simple,
yes, Wole
right?
is also fine.
All right, thank you. All right. So that said, uh, Wally, I think, like I was saying earlier, looking you up online, which is like my practice, just to get a little bit of, bio for, of my audience, so that I can introduce them. I was looking you up and I saw that, wow, you're doing this. You're doing this. As a matter of fact, on your website, something reads as, let me look at it. The way it read, it was okay. Okay, where Wally works, right? And I saw about three organizations. So I was like, okay, where do I start from? All right. So because of that, right, I think you'll be in the best position to, tell our audience today, right, the works that you're involved with, right, the business that you're involved with, the ones that you started, right. If you can help double click a little bit into what each of them, does, maybe customer base, size of business, employees, and all of that, just to give our audience a bit of perspective about the work you do, and then we can take the conversation from there, if that's okay.
Great, great. Kunle, thanks so much for having me. This is um, I feel honored to to be able to share my story, because for me one of my values as a person, is mentorship.
Yeah.
And that is receiving mentorship from people, but also mentoring as many people as possible. And one of the
Mm,
best ways to do that is to share your story, because
mm,
for me, I stumbled into that thing of mentorship, as a teenager when I started reading about great men. And so, yeah, it's an opportunity for me to also start to share some of my own lessons in life. Good afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you're watching from and when you're watching this. My name is Wole Odetayo, and yeah, Kunle said it. Yeah, it's I must also admit that I'm a man of many parts. And let me try and break that down as simply as I can. Um, Wole Odetayo hails from Modakeke, Osun State, which is one of the 36 states in Nigeria. But I grew up, was given birth in Ibadan, grew up all my life in Ibadan. Had my primary school, at Mary Hill Convent School. Went on to Government College Ibadan GCI, and then Wesley College of Science, Elekuro, also in Ibadan, and then said I'm not going to study in Ibadan, right? Just wanted to get out of Ibadan and explore the world. So first gain admission to to Madonna University to study medicine. Accreditation issues came up after 2 years. Then I took a transfer to Igbinedion University where I studied medicine and surgery. But right in while I was studying, I decided to discover myself because I was an avid reader. I don't even read as much as I used to read as a teenager. I was an avid reader, and I don't read, fiction. I read non-fiction. I love to read biographies and histories of places. I love history. So I started discovering myself, and I think that's what changed my perceptive my perception rather about life entirely. To give you a little bit of background to that, so I would say my inspiration to be who I am today probably stems out of funny thing, it's but it's out of entertainment. So if you remember in 1991, there was this popular music called Heal the World by Michael Jackson. And that song actually inspired me a lot. So, I remember then growing up in Ibadan, I used to watch the video of that song several times a day, showing kids that were suffering, showing tanks, showing people, war. And the world was actually in the middle of all sorts of different kinds of battle war at the time. You had the Soviet Union. You had it was in 1991 that USSR fell. So there was a lot of Cold War was being. I mean, there were just so many things going on in the world at the time. So that song was an apt song, but I wanted to heal the world. Really, that song it really inspired me to heal the world, and that was why I said I was going to study medicine. So I'm from a lineage of engineers. My father is an engineer. My eldest brother is an engineer. My middle brother is an engineer. My father's elder brother that didn't go to school beyond second. I mean, beyond primary school, died as the head of technicians of my town, not just village, town. Head of technician. That's how technical we are now. So we're like, I'm from a lineage of engineers naturally, but I wanted to study medicine because I wanted to heal the world. So 10 years later, 2001, gained admission to study medicine, and the rest is history. But then, while I was in university, I discovered that healing the world actually means a lot more from all that I was reading, And so for me, I felt like creating sustainable jobs, entrepreneurship, giving the people the opportunity to make a living out of an enterprise, was actually one of the best ways to heal the world because then the opposite of poverty for me is not wealth, is dignity. Oftentimes we say that people in the village, you know, um, they are poor, and I laugh. The man in the village lives in his house, can, probably doesn't need to worry about rent, can feed his family, sleeps and wake up. Nobody's pursuing him for to come and pay back loan and stuff. That's dignity. And that man is in a good place. Yes, he might not be as ambitious as owning the rest of the world, but really, can we really even own the world to start with? So that changed my perception about life, and started focusing on just creating sustainable jobs. So I became an entrepreneur as a teenager, while in school as a student entrepreneur, um, and the rest is history. I employed my first employee at 19, um, and you know um, founded the first company. Well, started the process of founding the first company when I was in year five. When I was in year five, and that was when started trying to set up lofting. I did so many things too back then in school, but like selling laptops and so on and so forth. Try to run my university's bookshop because University of Ibadan that was running the bookshop at the time. felt it wasn't sustainable anymore. I got the license from my university to run it, but then I had to move, to Benin for clinical, so I couldn't run that business. I had to leave that business behind. But in year five, we took that all that courage and we decided, and my childhood friend went to same my primary school, and met in the same church, Michael Oluwagbemi. We decided to then just form our own company, and that's how we started the registration of Lofty Inc. Allied Partners Limited. It took 2 years. Then back then it used to take long for you to register. You need to involve a lawyer and stuff and so on and so forth. So by 2009, we registered Lofty Inc. This was a year after school now. We registered Lofty Inc. And Lofty Inc. was born out of the need to, it was, to even start, it was born out of our own desire and our aspirations and our dream as young kids. So when we were in primary school, and Michael used to talk about how Nigeria was broken. Again, this was in the early 90s. We used to talk about how Nigeria was broken, how we could fix Nigeria. We didn't even know that the world would even be what it is today. And we talk about how we could fix the world and so on and so forth. So it was an opportunity for us to do this, the way we wanted to do it. And that was how we, ended up, saying let's register company. So I can't run the bookshop anymore, but we can register a company and actually focus on it. So 2009, Lofting was birthed, and with the aim of supporting businesses to create jobs. So we wanted to be a multiplier. We didn't want to get in the weed of, because we know that we couldn't achieve much if we get ourselves in the weed. So we wanted to be an enabler. And that was how what led to Lofting. We wanted to solve problems, by supporting other innovators that solve problems. We didn't know what it was called at the time, but my friend Michael stumbled on the word incubation and acceleration, business incubation and acceleration. And so we said, okay. So he shared, the details with me, shared documents with me. We read it. We fell in love with the idea. We said, this is exactly. So again, business incubation or acceleration means you're trying to, support other business owners, innovators in this case, to drive their ideas, support them to groom their ideas, incubate their ideas till it becomes mature and then becomes bankable. But then we said we're going to do it with a twist. And we're going to leverage on technology, and we're going to leverage on the growing technology, mobile technology at the time. It was mobile technology that we knew. And then also in Nigeria, we had youth restiveness. There were a lot of young people that wasn't working. We felt Nigeria was going. We saw it at that time that Nigeria was going to, because of the amount of sheer number of growing youths that we have that were going jobless. We could leverage on that and support that. So for us, the vision was very clear from day one. So we then said, let's set up an accelerator. By the way, this was about the same time that other great names in the industry today were even setting up names like Y Combinator. Y Combinator is like the most successful accelerator in the world. The time we're thinking about this was also the time they too were ruminating around this, and you know, um, so we set up Wennovation Hub, which is actually Nigeria's first tech accelerator. And it was a few months before the likes of CC Hub, but we started the same year with CC Hub, but a few months before. Later on that year, we had another accelerator join us called IVD. IVD then was funded by Faladiola, Mr. Faladiola of GT Bank. Yeah. And Dota was running it at the time. So there's three of us in Nigeria then doing this thing called Tech Accelerator. In fact, we used to call ourselves incubators, right? And for us to explain what business incubator or tech incubator means, we literally have to use the chicken egg incubator to support that view. That marked the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur, and we just never looked back. We went on to create different companies, and our vision at Lofting is to support and grow and build at least 10 million businesses at the end of this decade. Which again, we are doing through different entities. A couple of years later, we founded our first our first fund around 2014, which is a fallout of our own blueprints. So when we're setting up Innovation Hub, we knew that we needed to set up a fund. So we started investing in small businesses, in tech businesses rather, and then we snowballed that into a proper fund. Today, that fund in March 2025 announced the $43 million close of it, first round close of its $75 million target, right? So yet it's been a year coming, but something happened and essentially changed the trajectory of all these businesses. And by the way, Lofting, again, as a consulting business. So don't forget, in 2009, Lofting was a consulting business. It started set up as a consulting business. You can call us more like an Accenture, but for the bottom of the pyramid for early stage for small businesses. We're consulting. We're doing a lot of work, to support, to grow small businesses. And then we founded in 2011. We founded the Wennovation Hub, and then in 2014, the fund was founded, which is the Lofting Capital Management, which is in its fourth round, raising its fourth round. But then in 2003, something happened. My childhood friend got called by um, you know the current president as at 2025 now. I mean, president at the time, that was incoming president, President Tinubu, to run the essentially to run the compressed natural gas initiative of the presidency. And that for us was an inflection point at Lofting. We felt that it was an opportunity to, you know, let the next generation of leaders at Lofting run Lofting, because already it was already like 15 years of us running Lofting. We felt like it was an opportunity for us to do something new, let young people run Lofting, and then we can all expand. So all the partners, the four of us, and I didn't talk about them. So Michael, myself, co-founded, but later on got Dami Agbola, who's also a partner at Lofting, who then introduced us to or drew our attention to Idris Bello, who also became a partner of Lofting. All three, Michael, Damian, and Idris, met themselves in Houston. I was in Nigeria running Lofting in Nigeria. They supported them. All of them relocated to Nigeria literally to run Lofting. So we felt it was an opportunity for us to, to let next generation lead Lofting. And so I decided to step into board role. All of us stepped into board role and left operations. When Michael got called up by the president to run the CNG initiative. And that left room for where I currently work now. So some consultants saw that I had left and said, "Look, well, there's an opportunity for you, to do something. We know you're very passionate about this." At the time, the Odua Group, which is the Odua Investment Company Limited, which is owned by the six southwestern states in Nigeria, just set up. I mean, Odua is about 60 years old. The Odua's oldest subsidiary is 80 years old. So you can imagine, over 80 years old. So you can imagine this is like a dinosaur organization, as the case may be, founded by Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Was diversifying into technology for the first time. And they were looking for a CEO. So I went through the process, got appointed to run the subsidiary for Odua, which is called the Southwest Innovation and Technology Company Limited, which is where I currently work as the lead and the CEO of the institution. So yes, that's like the summary of my journey, of my entrepreneurship journey. From fun, so I never worked for anybody. I only consulted. At the time, in between our story at Lofting in 20 around that 2014, when we're founding the Lofting Capital Management, 2013 to be precise. We almost ran bankrupt. We almost went bankrupt at Lofting. So that gave room for us to for me to explore the opportunity. So I joined an organization called Idea Hub, which is the Innovation Development Entrepreneurs something I can't remember what Idea Hub was. Idea Hub was founded by NIDA, was funded by NIDA, supported by Accenture at the time. And so it was a government hub set up essentially by federal government, to just do something in the tech space. So I was tapped to be the operations manager of Idea Hub. The inaugural operations manager. Was overseeing the Lagos operations and the Calabar operations, designing programs for them Did that for about 2 years before I went back again, to Wennovation Hub Lofting when we stabilized and we were able to pick. So I've experienced the highs and lows while teaching people to be an entrepreneur. I've almost went bankrupt in my own business myself. I mean, we still see that every day. And yeah, so essentially that speaks to my journey as an entrepreneur.
I don't even know where to start from. And thank you for sharing all that you have shared. Right, it's interesting that something that you birthed, I mean, that you conceived as a very young person, right? As over the years, kind of, it's been sustained, right? It's grown in leaps and bounds, and now it's even, you've even have partners who have now come to even join, and all of you have now even stepped into the board role. It's really interesting, and it was born out of passion and the need to heal the world, so to say. Now, you mentioned some interesting numbers the other time, right? I know you just mentioned them in passing, but I caught them, right? You mentioned that, okay, so so there is a Lofty Inc., which is like the consulting outfit.
Yeah,
There is We Innovation Hub, right, which is like
tech hub.
a combinator of some sort, right?
Mm.
Now, and you said that you've been able to raise, I think, 43 million. Is it $43 million?
Yeah, so the fund, so the third entity is the Lofting Capital Management, which is our VC fund.
Okay,
So in the tech
okay,
space, VCs invest in tech startups, right? So it was part of our
okay.
blueprint to have a VC fund. We wanted to start it as just as we started out as an angel investment group of
Yeah.
friends and families that from diaspora that were investing in the startups we were building. And we got lucky. We invested in Flutterwave. I mean, we invested first in Andela, which became Nigeria's first unicorn. I think, Nigeria's first unicorn, and then we invested in Flutterwave, which also became a unicorn. We invested in Wave, which also became a unicorn. I mean, Wave is not a Nigerian entity, but also an African entity, which became a unicorn. So again, we just got really, really lucky by God's grace, really, to have been able to pick winners. But we've also invested in very great companies. I mean, Move is in the news today. Move is about to close a $1.2 billion raise. It's a Nigerian entity that is global,
Mm,
right? They have Move have they have operations in UAE, in India, in all around Africa, now in the US, in California, and they're about to close $1.2 billion. We also invested in that Move. We invested in Reliance HMO. There are several names that
mm,
in tech startup today in Nigeria that we invested in. So we got really, I would say, beyond luck, it's a hard work of our partner that runs the investment, Idris Bello, solid guy.
mm, mm.
Also an alumni of IFE. Like to call themselves great, but we'll see. But interesting. Yeah, did amazing work with an amazing team that picks winners all the time. And
Mm,
from we snowballed all those investments, became our first fund, became our second fund. Our third fund was meant to be 10. I mean, our first fund was just the group of angel investments we made. Our second fund is about a few million US dollars, about 1.5 million US dollars actually, that also invested in great guys and gave very good returns to investors. Our third fund was meant to be a $10 million fund. We ended up being oversubscribed to 14.4 million US dollars. And then our current fund, which is called the Alpha Fund, was originally targeted at 60 million US dollars. We've probably crossed that now. But in March, we announced the first close of that fund at 43 million US dollars. And now we've shifted that goalpost to say this can really sit around the 75 million US dollars fund. And these are all funds raised by Africans, from young guys that had some mystery and ties with Ibadan, grew up in Ibadan. Idris had spent some time in Ibadan, and Michael grew up in Ibadan. Dami, we all have that very interesting, yeah, to rate. But it's a Pan African team. We have operations. That fund currently have operations in Kenya, in Cairo, or rather in Nairobi, in Cairo, in South Africa. And in Lagos here, we do quite, all these ecosystems. We invest in them. We're active in them, and yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, in my head, I am trying to understand how you navigated from that business that you and your friend started, like as we say, like play, right? You started it like when you are 19, more or less, and and then you're doing some consulting and all of that. It wasn't like a big deal. And at some point, I don't know what happened. We probably shared that, but at some point, a few things happened, right? You started the We Innovation Hub, and then you decided to go into VCs and angel investing and all of that. And today we're looking back, and if you add up everything that you've raised, we're talking about, if not more than $100 million that have already been raised cumulatively or almost, right? And my question, I think, is around at what point did that what point was the inflection point that you can say, okay, we move from being, the small players and then want to begin to play in the big league? And what really led to that? Is that question clear enough?
Yes. So you're saying, yeah, what was our inflection point? What shifted? What was the thing that changed the story for us? Um, it's actually a tough question to answer, because looking back, actually, it's not very easy to just say that it was one day you woke up and then there was this thing. It's a cumulative of the mindset. It's a cumulative of the beliefs, of our vision, of our passion, and all these things kind of like play. And honestly, and I think that's how real. I think that's how this is really definition of entrepreneurship. A lot of times, some people may be able to point to say, oh, there was an inflection point here, this particular change. But if you're not prepared for those inflection points, you won't be able to take advantage of those inflection points. So I wouldn't say those inflection points are responsible for whatever we call success, which for us we just feel is the beginning. Now that we're all doing other things, trying to build, touch lives in different ways, it's just the beginning for us. But I must talk about some milestones that I think are very, very important that also woke us up. So one of it was, I talked about the bankruptcy. In in 2012, 2013, our funds started dwindling because we're self-funded. We didn't start out with investors. We don't have external investors in Lofting, for example. We really have partners that own Lofting, and staff members that own Lofting, because we have an ESOP where staff also share in that opportunity. So we're self-funded. I told you that as I was a student entrepreneur. When I was leaving school, I could say that my endeavor in school cumulatively had led me to a self worth of about, this is me, my calculation, and this was even my own liquidity at the time as a student, leaving school, was around $10,000 at the time, because dollar then was at around, what, about 100 naira plus. And when I was leaving school, I had, you know, less than 2 million US, less than 2 million naira rather at the time. So it was a little above $10,000 at the time. Um, and all that went into trying to just fund Lofting. My childhood friend who also funded Lofting poured in a lot of money. He literally used to joke about it that, in the US, their retirement plan is called 401k. They literally, had to pour his 401k into funding Lofting. It was working in the US then. I was the only one in Nigeria. But we had to pay staff, we had to cover operations. We had support from people. His uncle gave us his gate man house at his office on Ogba in Ikeja. That was our first office. So we didn't have to pay rent, but we had to pay staff. I could tell you for a fact then I was earning 10,000 naira. I was paying myself 10,000 naira, but my least paid staff at the time was 40,000 naira. because these were all very smart guys. Then Tanzania couldn't even, after like 2 months. I mean, after like 2 weeks of transportation, money is already burnt. So these are all things that really formed us. We struggled through all that, but at by 2012, 2013, funds started dwindling, and we almost bank. We could just. It got to a month, and we knew that, man, after this month's salary, there was no fund anywhere anymore. And then, we just got lucky. I reached out to someone I'd met. So there was this day that the minister of ICT at the time, Bola Johnson, had met us at CC Hub, called for a meeting at CC Hub. And that meeting, I told them that it was time. This was 2012. I told them that it was time that Nigeria, that the tech hub, that tech ecosystem, got an angel network. Because I'd met prior to then, I'd met with a group from the World Bank called InfoDev. They came to Nigeria. They met all of us that were the tech players in the ecosystem at the Tony Emelu Foundation. And I told them, I said, look, we have this blueprint at Lofting. We wanted to call it Lofting Angel Network. We already have friends that are investing in our startups. We think that this is the way to go, so that we can inspire people to continue to do the work they do. And they said, no, angel networks are not named after companies; they are named after cities. And they said, if you can organize that, we will support you. So when I went to this meeting that we met at CC Hub, the minister at the time, Mobola Johnson, said, I will introduce you to my Oga at Accenture. So Mobola Johnson was ex Accenture. And while she was at Accenture, she also had a boss before she became the boss at Accenture. The person called Mr. Dotun Sulaiman. He's a veteran in Nigeria, in Nigerian business space. And said, my Oga is a perfect person. He's the one that invests in small businesses. He's a perfect person to help you with your angel network idea. So at the time, I developed this relationship with this very gracious man who poured everything into me, gave me whenever I call. He's a busy man. I mean, as at the time, he was like on the board of 6 different public quoted companies. But if I call him, he would answer. And he would answer my questions. He was very gracious. So I developed a relationship with him, and I told him, sir. So at this time, when we knew we couldn't go ahead anymore, unfortunately for us too, at the time, so I can't tell a story without talking about the Africa Leadership Forum. Africa Leadership Forum at the time was being led by an amazing man called Dr. Adeniran Wale. We call him Oga. But Dr. Adeniran Wale had also a solid partner in person of Dr. Ajayi, who my partner, Michael, had met in 2010 at a conference. So this is our journey to setting up Wennovation Hub. Michael, when we got this idea of, and I'm going to connect everything. When we got this idea of, young people running business at incubator, at the same time, World Bank had a call for idea for their conference they called ABCD, Annual Banking Conference for Developing Economies, ABCD, Annual Banking Conference on Developing Economies. So they will call all these development economies together to talk about common challenges. And that year's theme in 2010 was on youth and employment. And there was a call for idea on the best idea. So we put in our own idea that of how to engage youth, leveraging the growing technology space to solve problems, building apps and solutions, technology-driven solutions to solve problems. So out of over 3,000 entrants, we were one of the top 7. And my friend had to fly, was based in US at the time, had to fly to Stockholm to pitch. And on the panel that I pitched to was Dr. Ajayi, who was deputy of Dr. Adeniran Wale. They were both running the Africa Leadership Forum at the time. And Africa Leadership Forum got one of the 6 licenses to run the CBN-funded Entrepreneurship Development Center. So these were normal MSMEs. They were supporting soap makers, even to set up a factory and so on and so forth. That was what Entrepreneurship Development Centers was all about. But they loved the idea. We didn't win. We didn't come top 3 of that pitch that my friend went to go and pitch. But we met Dr. Adeniran Wale, Dr. Ajayi, who said, you need to meet Dr. Adeniran Wale. So my friend flew to New York to meet Dr. Adeniran Wale. And that was all in 2010. And that was how, in 2011, Dr. Adeniran Wale's organization, Africa Leadership Forum, signed an agreement with us to give us a space in that same entrepreneurship development center in Lagos where we can start Wennovation Hub. So they give us laptops, they gave us one MacBook and four PCs. They furnished the space. They just didn't pay for salaries. They said you should guys go and figure out salaries. So we had the space in 2011 to start with. So unfortunately for us in 2013, they called us and said, sorry, funding from CBN is drying, and we have to lose the space. So you guys have to leave. So it was about the same time we couldn't also pay salaries. So it was all coming almost to a halt. So I had to reach out to, Mr. Dr. Sulaiman and say, sir, we have entrepreneurs. I was a bachelor and I was living in this three-bedroom apartment with two of my other staff. And we told all the startups then to come to the house then. So they will come, instead of going to the hub, there was no hub anymore. They come to the house in the morning, they'll go in the evening. And we're doing the thing in the house. And that went on for 6 weeks. But in the beginning of all that, I reached out to Mr. Dr. Sulaiman and he said, Wole, we're actually setting up a hub now, need that funded. And I think we would need your expertise to run the hub. That was how I ended up, becoming the operations manager at Idea Hub. So I did that in Idea Hub from 2013, yeah, till 2014, over a year plus, when I left Idea Hub, but helped them set up, ran the inaugural accelerator for Idea Hub. Now, this is another interesting story of my life. In the inaugural program accelerator of Idea Hub, we had 10 startups. Now, the most successful startup at the time probably broke the ground for raising funds. Um, the name of that startup was ISEC. They raised $10 million at the valuation of $100 million. Funny enough, at that time, and all that money was local funding from a PE firm because they were right on time um, around the CBN policy. The CBN policy said all the banks should move their hosting from international to local. No, yeah, and that they should also use local security um, agencies, more or less, to secure that hosting. And ISEC was all about security, for banks. So they were right on point, and so they were able to raise money then. So they were the most successful of the 10 startups in my cohort at the time. But in that same cohort was another startup called Precurio, which was led by Shola Akinlade. Shola Akinlade, after that program, went on to meet. Of course, his partner was also working in the same building, in that same Idea Hub building, besides CC Hub in Yaba at the time. Met his partner Ezra, and they founded Paystack. So he left Precurio to go on to found Paystack. So it was in my accelerator at the time which I had the opportunity of all these brilliant guys in that cohort, and became really built something amazing out of Paystack, right? But at the same time, my organization, which I went to join Idea Hub and then went back to, I'd invested in Andela, and Andela had become, really big at the time. He left Andela to go and start Flutterwave, and we also went on to invest with a team. So all these, unicorns were forming round around the work that I was privileged to do, and these great entrepreneurs, in our lives in one way or the other. And all that for me um speaks to really shaped how I view life. A lot of the startups that I've worked with were just startups then. Founders had gone on to build amazing things, and that really speaks to how I see life and how we should just focus on inspiring people to solve problems. Because we can't solve all the problems by ourselves alone.
You see, I just kept quiet. I just allow you just to share your because it looks like you've gone through a whole lot, right? And I believe that our audience will have a lot to just listening to your story. We'll have a lot to just connect the dots and say, "Wow, that's." Because some of these names we just hear them today, right? We just see Paystack here, we hear Flutterwave here, but you're telling us a back end story, right? That more often than not, we don't get to hear, right? We just hear that they raised 1 billion, they raised this, and everybody's like, hey, how did they raise this thing, right? But it's good to hear you share some of this perspective. Now, just for my education, right, and for the education of our audience, what does a typical hub do in terms of how you enable businesses, right? Because at times we just hear hub here, innovation hub, this hub, that hub, right? But it's not just the name, right? There are certain enablement, there are certain things that you make happen that enable these guys to be able to come up with great ideas and all of that. Before we go on your own journey, since you're an expert in that area, will you be able to just double click and share what you do as either a combinator or a hub, right? To enable businesses thrive or ideate and scale.
Great. Just to put the perspective. So when I was talking about combinator, then I was referring to Y Combinator. Y
Mm.
Combinator is the world most successful accelerator.
Even
They are US
today.
based. Yeah, they give birth to the likes of Airbnb.
Mm.
So many names, like so many. In fact, asset under management for Y Combinator is over 400 billion US dollars. Because they have several companies that have gone to IPO, and they started from idea stage from Y Combinator. So
Kind of, yeah.
so we modeled around Y Combinator because but we all started around the same time. So
Mm.
just to speak to what a hub is, a tech hub, as is usually being called, is a place where support is provided for innovators to focus and build innovative solutions as a response to tough socioeconomic challenges. A typical hub will come with the resources that those entrepreneurs will need or innovators will need. These resources include knowledge, include sector knowledge. So general knowledge is different from sector specific knowledge. Usually, sector specific knowledge will come through mentors and access to market consultants in the space. It comes with funding in most cases. In some cases, comes with physical workspace support, so you don't need to worry about rent. They work all this into a deal with you. Usually, in some cases, tech ops will take equity positions in startups that they are supporting. In some cases, they even would go on to invest in those startups and take bigger equity position. But the most important thing that tech ops provide is that knowledge, both the general entrepreneurship knowledge, that is how to build a business, and then this sector specific knowledge or things you call mentoring, which are you look for specialists in that space that can groom those entrepreneurs, and funding, access to space, and then access to market. So they help these businesses navigate things like compliance, government regulations, and sometimes they help them and hold them to imagine a hub introducing you to Dangote to say can become a supplier to Dangote, you can become a service provider to Dangote. You know that God has buttered your bread, right? Because then you have a big company that can continue to pay you, and you don't need to worry about struggles that small businesses will have. That's what a tech hub will do. Now, the underlying thing that makes it a tech hub is that all these things is based on of technology and innovation. And the difference between innovation and technology, really, we must point out is that technology in itself is, even though we tend to call it digital technology today, technology itself spans beyond digital. So for example, the door handle that we all use today to open a door is a technology to open that door. The key to open a door is a technology to lock, to make a place secured. But tech hubs are more tuned towards digital technology and then innovation, which so that is innovative thinking around how to deliver value in a better way, than what it is. So imagine what India did with the centrifuges, where centrifuges were very expensive, or let me use the microscope. Used to be very expensive and originally used to cost like $10,000, and Indians went on to build a 2000 version of it. I can give you several examples of that innovation thinking, but you get it. The idea is that how can you take something that is currently hard to reach and then make it accessible to even more people that need that service or solution the most. So that's what tech hubs are really all about.
I get it. I get it. Thank you very much for sharing that. Transparently, I've never heard it explained like that, right? And if I go back to my, is it, I didn't do chemistry, but chemistry days, right? It's like creating a kind of culture, right? Within which certain things can grow in a particular. You understand what I mean? So you create
Exactly.
that culture, and you expect that certain things will just grow because that environment allows for and enables and give them everything that they need to succeed, and that is really
Essentially a
very
womb.
helpful.
Essentially a womb. Yeah.
Like a womb, yeah, yeah, like a womb, right? Actually, and things just grow out of it, right? But I mean, thinking about the business side of that now, you must have to put all of that resources together for you as Winnovator, right? Because all that you need to put together to ensure that when these guys come, they get everything they need to be able to deliver or to be able to build, right? It means that you're also going out on a limb, you're taking a risk, right? Because if you don't get lucky, right? After some time, the funds will run dry because the people that put money into that to want some return and all of that, correct, right?
Yes. And it's interesting you mentioned that because I just go back from a few months, about a month ago. I just go back from a group of, we call ourselves ESOs. So you can call hubs to ESOs, entrepreneurship support organizations. 25 of us were selected by Connector Africa to run, one of the biggest incubators that you will see very soon. And one of the things everybody was talking about was sustainability of the hubs. And I told them in that group, it was in Nairobi. I said, guys, you would know peace when you know that your users, which are your entrepreneurs, are not your customers. When people usually come to, when as entrepreneurship support organizations, people come to us to build businesses, and they usually come without money, without almost nothing. They usually come with their shoes and their cats, like we usually call it, and just idea and sheer determination to build something. Those people were not going to pay your salary. They're not going to pay your rent. They're not going to keep your lights
They
on.
don't have it. They're
Um,
not they're not funded for it.
yeah, you might be lucky to be able to support those that are transitioning from paid employment to do that, because then they have money. They've they've stacked up money to do that. But usually, when you're talking about people that are jobless, or looking for employment, that are going into that, it becomes a lot, more difficult for them to be able to pay your bills. So you literally, as a hub, you need to figure out how to fund your operations. That's one of the things that you need to figure out. So your customers are different from your users. Your users are the entrepreneurs, are the innovators, but your customers are other organizations that want to invest in those entrepreneurs, and some of the organizations that want to support those entrepreneurs. So they will gladly give you money to run a program. They will gladly tell you that they want to invest in entrepreneurs, and so um, they will then give you money to invest in entrepreneur through the VC fund, like I told you. And then down the line, if you're lucky, 5% of all those guys that you're supporting will become successful, like the fund, right? And then you can then now exit, from those investments or from those stakes you have, if you're lucky. And then that can then now provide some sort of, money back to you. I'm lucky, for example, where I'm currently working, Sweet for short, Southwest Innovation and Technology Company Limited. Sweet is funded by Udua, and I've been lucky to be given some capital to run my program. So, for example, at Sweet, our unique selling point at Sweet is that we're focused on commercializing research outputs. So before now, I was just supporting innovators, from everywhere, from academia, from the street, from university, from pre-university, anybody. So far, you're an innovator. But at Sweet, we're focused on researchers. So if you're an industry researcher, or you're an academic researcher, you have an IP that you're working on, and that IP is ripe, and you need support to take it to the market. That's what we do at Sweet. And for the next 5 years at Sweet, with the support of Odua, we will be investing 250,000 US dollars in our accelerator, which we're looking for more investors to join us in our accelerator, that we can then put a few of those, researchers with their outputs or those research outputs and then accelerate in the market. Let me give you as context to what can come out of, research commercialization. A group of researchers in Unilag got some grant to build a urine analysis test kit for malaria. So before now, and it's the first of its kind in the world, they've done it successfully. Before now, if you have malaria, you have to go to the hospital. So the impact of what these guys have built is huge. So they did this research, and today they have a kit where you can pee into a small bowl, use a test strip, and you can know if you have malaria. And that can save tens of thousands of lives from dying, because some people overdose on antibiotics that affect their, some organs or some parts of their body, while some people take anti-malaria and then you start to have malaria resistant,
Resistance.
resistance, and yeah, through the anopheles mosquito.
Yeah.
And then people then start to die because they then take anti-malaria next time, it will not work, and then
Walk.
to lead to cerebral spinal issues or diseases, and people will then die of malaria. So all these things are all related, right? Now that research output is Nigerian from Unilag, and we're looking for ideas like that can come out of research labs that can spore. Another one I like to talk about is a professor that died in 2019, late 2019. But his work, he was the first winner of the NLNG Prize for Science, which rewards researchers with great research. And one of the things he did, maybe not the first winner, but was one of the winners of the NLNG Prize for Science. But his whole life work, he was a geophysicist and an engineer. His whole life work was about using laterite as an alternative to build roads, especially in erosion prone areas. So cement is not as durable. We proved that cement is not as durable as laterite in places where there's heavy erosion, like gully erosion. And he stumbled on that idea when he was supervising a federal government work on the Ikotekpene Calabar Road in the 70s. So all his life as a researcher, that was what he did. That look, he was able to prove that laterite can withstand up to 20 years of erosion, while cement can only withstand 6 years of erosion. Why and today in Nigeria we have parts where we can't even build, and laterite costs about one third of the amount to build roads. That's the technology. That's something we're willing to invest in. Imagine if we're building roads instead of using cement, we're building road at one third the cost. Those are the things that we invest. So again, um, finding those resources is key, and we're lucky that at Sweet we're being funded by Odua, but it's not enough. We need a minimum of a million US dollars every year to invest in 10 solid, research outputs that can then go on to change our lives fundamentally, and that's what we're focused on. For example, at Sweet.
I mean, thanks a lot for sharing that. And I'm joining, Wole here to call on investors to, reach out to him on this sweet project, because as we all can see, it's laudable and he's passionate about it. And I mean, Wole has a track record of, building great things. So I'm sure that when you invest in Sweet, right, your investment is in safe hands. All right. Now, I have a question for you, Wally, and it's an interesting one because most of the times, right, when I do these interviews, I do it with entrepreneurs, and in every sense of it, you are. But you're not just an entrepreneur; you are also on the side of. So your entrepreneurship journey has taken you to that point where you also support entrepreneurs. So you're not just like building a business, you're building businesses, right? To, supporting businesses, right? Not just one. And my question is around, what do you look out for, right? When young entrepreneurs or innovators and all of that, when they reach out to you and they say, I have this idea, I have these, I've done this so far. What do you look at? What makes you feel like, man, I want to invest in this, or we need to put our money behind this?
Thank you. Great question. Because yeah, the entrepreneur is everything. Um, so the values that we look out for in entrepreneurs came out of an excerpt that is a speech excerpt given by delivered by Chief Obafemi in the I think 1963, just a few years after independence, and there are just about five or six of them. One is courage. Does that entrepreneur have the courage to walk and to travel paths less traveled? Because you know, in business, there's something called the red ocean strategy and the blue ocean strategy. If you don't have the courage to do something new in paths less traveled, you will end up in the red ocean strategy and then you just be like every other Me Too business. The second one is collaboration. Does that entrepreneur know that they cannot do it alone? You cannot, one tree cannot make a forest. Does that entrepreneur have the mind to find talent? Do they respect talent? Do they know that they need to attract people to themselves to build, their vision? Collaboration. The third one is integrity. Without integrity, that guy is wasted. So we invest in startups today. Imagine if, and it happens, I must tell you, it happens that instances where this happen, where startup founders will raise money from you and will use that money to jackpot. They raise money from you and then use that money to relocate their family, and sometimes they stay back and then later they go and join. They raise money from you. They see that the business that they are building that you invested in is going down. They go on to go and create a replica. I am telling you, it happens. They use the resources because they have control over the money. Of course, you can't micromanage everybody. They take part of that money and go and start up another business, and then they tell you that you don't have shares in that business, and then they will tell you that this other business has failed. And when the business is failed, it has failed. You have nothing to lose. I mean, you've you win some, you gain some. That's the essence of the business, right? So integrity matters a lot. So we look out for those that have integrity. The last two things are related, but I like to separate them. The first one of the last two things, or the fourth point, is selflessness. Look, I was speaking with someone recently, and the person said, I have an idea. I can buy this and sell it. I need to make money. I have an idea. I need to make money. Do you think it's a good way for me to venture into entrepreneurship? And I said, no. Because if you venture into entrepreneurship because of money, you will burn out and you will miss out. You have to focus on solving a problem. It is in solving a problem that money will meet you. Of course, you think about sustainability as a secondary reason, which is, how do I do this in a sustainable way? But the first thing is that, what problem am I solving? And that is where selflessness come in. Until you know that, when an entrepreneur knows that this thing that they are doing is a calling that is beyond them and it's about lifting others, if they are not that selfless, then they cannot have enough fuel when the chips are down. They cannot have enough fuel when they are going through the valley of death, which almost every entrepreneur will go through, which is that time when it feels like nobody's seen you. It feels like you're wasting your time. They will just tap out because then money is not there. What am I doing here? That's why most people that do, paid employment, wants to move into entrepreneurship struggle, right? Because they're saying money, there's no money here now, no money, right? So selflessness is very key. The last point is the greater good. And that's why I said selflessness, and greater good are related, but they are different things. The greater good is about this thing that I'm doing does it carry impact? Am I truly looking away, from what is hurting people, or I'm considering about how to, decide to take the longer route to this because I don't want to hurt people, I don't want to hurt the environment. The greater good is about impact, but while selflessness is about doing this to lift people, so, but you can say impact, but they are different things, right? So these five things, again, to recap: first one is courage, second one is collaboration, third one is integrity, the fourth one is selflessness, and the fifth one is the greater good. These things are very, very key. And these are some of the things to look out for in an entrepreneur before we invest. Because beyond money, the biggest investment entrepreneurship support organizations like us, or incubator or innovation labs like us, invest in entrepreneurs beyond money, is our time, is the relationship we build with them, is the time we share with them. Those things are invaluable. The advice we give them, is invaluable. There was a particular guy that lived with me in that 3 bedroom apartment that I lived in. And it was we're just trying a model out at the time. We said, we normally don't support solo entrepreneurs. We support teams of entrepreneurs because of the key man risk. But we said, let's try this guy. This guy is very brilliant, very smart, but he finds it very difficult working with people. We said, let's give him a shot. This guy was living with me, and it took us 6 months to figure out how to build a unique selling point. And that idea came to me after we were both coming back from work and we're going home that day in my car. And it just occurred to me like, oh, what about if we do it this way? And said, wow, he never thought about it. This was 6 months of us talking almost every day about, how can we do this thing that you're doing differently? And he struck me like a lightning bolt. And I said, well, why don't you do it this way? And he said, oh, let me research. And he researched and found out that, and that became one of his first of his kind ever of what he was trying to build. And we built a unique selling point from now. That is invaluable. Money cannot bring that. It is the all the combination of the ideas, the network we've built, the time, and all this experience that we've built ourselves that yielded something for that guy at the time. And that for me is more valuable than money. So yeah, because of all that investment, those 5 things that I mentioned are very key. Are the things that we look out for when we are picking innovators to support, or teams of innovators to support.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Wale, for sharing that. That's really deep, right? Especially the story of that young man and how, after 6 months of having to, drive in and drive out and do stuff, then that idea came. If you're not patient or if you're not willing to, go out on a limb and just offer that support on and ready to do it on it, for perhaps a reasonably long period, I'm not sure if that would have happened because the guy would probably have moved out and all of that. So thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, there are a few ideas so a few questions popping up in my head, right? But I want to first of all double click a little bit on what you call the key man key
Risk.
man challenge, right? It's a
Mhm.
key man risk, right? What is that in your world? What is a key man risk? What does it mean?
Essentially, it means that let me use this example so you understand. What happens if Dangote dies tomorrow? What happens to Dangote Empire?
Well,
But
possibly,
you can see that Dangote has a system in place. Most
yeah.
likely, most likely from the way he runs his business, especially because they've even gone public. So once a business can go public and can survive and it can grow as a public company, you know that there's a support, a structure in place. So key man risk talks about what happens when that one person dies, or when that person leaves the business, or when that one person walks away. I mean, because tomorrow entrepreneurs are good, they can pick up a job. Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, right from university days, and today I have a job, right? Even though I own all these other things, but because it aligns with my vision and my passion. So entrepreneurs can turn around tomorrow and pick up a job. What happens to all that investment, that all the time I've put in you and all the money I put in you? You can just walk away if you don't. I mean, they're paying you more than you've ever raised. Why should you then sit to the business? So that's a key man challenge or key man risk. And we always look out for it. So that when you're walking away, do you have a structure in place? Do you have co-founders? Do you have other people? Have you been able to convince other people to join you on a team? But that guy was just a solo entrepreneur. He found it very difficult to working with people. So he was just doing everything like, and it was an extremely smart developer. Well, I don't know where he is again now. Been a long, long time. But I'm sure that he's still very strong and doing very well. But at the time, It was just that risk was just heavy then.
Mm. Okay, so you also mentioned a problem that I want to, for the sake of learning, all right, and for our audience. Now, you mentioned the possibility of a founder, right, taking the money and going, starting something else, and or jackpot, like you rightly said. And I've heard of cases like that, right? The other day, I still saw it in the news. Um, I mean, just a couple of days ago, on somebody WhatsApp status back home saying that some people raised, maybe if I mentioned the figure, you probably connect the dots. Like, is it $16 million? And then they've gone bust, right? And they've closed shop and all of that. The question I want to ask is, as a founder and as somebody who supports businesses, right? What kind of structure do you look out for uh, in the organizations that you support that gives you that confidence, beyond the integrity of the founder, right? What kind of governance do you need them to put in place on their end, on the business end, and on your hand as a founder, or as a founder, sorry? What kind of governance do you try to put in place so that you don't hear these stories that touch?
Okay, good, great question. I'm going to answer this question in two folds. One from a perspective of a venture lab, which is sorry. So when you hear things like venture lab, innovation hub, tech hub, they all mean the same thing. Or venture studio, they all mean the same thing, right? This for listeners that may be hearing this for the first time. Um, so from the perspective of a venture lab or a tech hub, actually when these co-founders come to you, they come to you with zero structure, especially if you're an early stage, accelerator. There are some later stage accelerators, but most of us are around early stage, especially in Nigeria here. We support very early stage entrepreneurs. They come to you without a structure. They may come with an experience of having done it before, but they have no structure. They just two guys or three guys or a few guys that are coming together to say, we have an idea. We want to build something. So literally that structure is not there. We help them build it. But the second perspective I wanted to answer this from is from that of of a venture capitalist or a venture investor. Now there are different categories of investors, so you must know. There is the angel investors. Again, just for those that don't know, there are angel investors. Angel investors also come in very early when there's no structure. In fact, when it was just an idea. Um, Sometimes the idea is just probably on paper or there's a demo to show about it. While some angel investors even come very early, especially if they've already developed a relationship with the entrepreneur or they believe the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurs, what we call the their not reliability now, but you know, like they have credibility, right? Someone like in, for example, there's a multiple serial entrepreneur, as they call it. If tomorrow he wants to start something again, people will put money in. If he just, says this is an idea, is one of the, by the way, in Wennovation is one of the less than 60 or 70 people in the world that have built two unicorns in their lifetime. That is tech-driven businesses from the scratch in their lifetime, and he was in pioneer CEO of both businesses. So it's not a common thing that yeah, that is done, right? So if tomorrow, and he's already on his third venture, right, which is also another conglomerate of other businesses. If tomorrow he wakes up and he says he wants to do something, you can almost be sure that entrepreneurs, just by him saying this is my idea, I need money, people will put money in it, right? So that case is different. But for most venture for most venture capital firms, they look out for number one, do you have traction? Do you have this business is already bringing in money? That's the ultimate proof that people would part with their money to buy your product. But then they're also looking for the team. Does this team, are they balanced? Do you have the sector knowledge? Do you have experience in that space? Or do you have very strong conviction? Or have you been able to prove that you know that sector very well? Do you have the right people? So if I give you this money, can you either use that money? Are you promising that you're prioritizing that you're going to use that money to raise key talents that would help you, put the right structure in place, or do you already have that structure in place? Maybe like a financial manager, like a CFO, or do you have a chief technology officer that is highly skilled, or do you have like a marketer? Depending on what you're building and what you're trying to run. So most VCs will look out for those things. Are you properly registered? If I put money in you, what's the agreement? What is signing the agreement with me as an investor? How do I exit that agreement? I mean that investment. What are the terms other investors are putting on the table? Those things, those structures even go beyond just the team. More about protecting your investment, and how you as an organization had thought about, or how you as a management team have thought about those things for the investors. So yeah, so the structures differ, and from those two perspectives, you can see that one without structure, one structure
Mm.
that even goes beyond just the business, but how you're going to spend the money, what are your priorities, what are your capacities, what do you want to use this money to do to build a capacity, and so on and so forth. Essentially, like a plan.
I get it. I get it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So, is it safe to assume that since most of the time when these guys come to you, they come without a structure per se? Is it safe to assume that when you're funding some of these guys, you have like a voice on the board, right? You have somebody who represents you on the board, one, and who is a signatory to the account to ensure that they're not just buying business class tickets all over the place, flying and just living the life. Do you do stuff like that?
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes sit on the board, not all the time. I mean, Lofting, for example, till date, I've invested in almost over 200 startups. You can imagine. How many boards can you sit on? Some of them will die. Some of them will not die. Some of them will continue to not really grow. Some of them will grow exponentially, right?
Mm.
So really, it's always difficult for you to always say that you want to sit on the board. Plus, most times, you're investing along with other people. So sometimes people that are lead investors that would take that board position, as the case may
Mm.
be. So yes, but I also want to correct the notion here about signing money and all that. You can't really micromanage
Things
entrepreneurs.
like that. Mm. Mm.
Yes, as a board chairman, for example, not just a mere board member, of which you're not probably not the board, you're going to be the board chairman.
Yeah.
As a board chairman, yes, you might have structures in place that say that when you want to withdraw certain money beyond a certain limit, the board chairman needs to know and needs to sign. But board chairmen that are effective, that run effective boards, don't sign on the bulk of the money that the CEO needs to
It's
run the
true.
entity,
It's true.
or else you'll be
Yeah.
stifling the CEO, right? So
Yeah.
just to also point that out, so it's not about ego watching, the entrepreneur per se, but it is about guiding that entrepreneur. That's the reason why I said integrity.
So it
You
comes
know,
down to integrity and trust of
yes,
for
and
that person
trust.
because
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You want something?
Mm. No, no, no. Just to I mean to buttress the point you're making because if we cannot micromanage, if we cannot sit on all the boards, I mean look at the example you cited. You supported more than 200 businesses, right? How many of them can you sit on? If you can't do all of those things, then it comes down to you being very very selective about the vetting sorry, being very thorough with the vetting process and very selective about who you give the support to, right?
Exactly.
Because we simply don't have the capacity, right? And I
Yeah.
say we now, I'm adding myself to your community.
Yeah.
We
Very true. Very true. Very
simply
true.
don't have the community. We simply don't have the capacity to sit on on all the boards and micromanage them and all of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Even though you might be lucky now to even now have maybe artificial intelligence to maybe help you attend all board meetings, and especially if you're a member of those boards, but you still need to analyze whatever it is, even if you tell
Like
AI
the
to
number.
summarize it. So like you're very correct. It's about the selection is one of the biggest things.
Mm.
Because it's in selection that you select based on values, not based on just ideas. That's why every VC that knows what they're doing will tell you that team is the first thing that they consider, not the
Mm.
idea. Because an idea can fail, but that team. So let me give you, a lot of people don't know the backstory of um Andela, for example. Andela started as Fora. What my partner at Lofty Inc. Led the investment in as angel investors. Then what invested in originally was Fora, but
Hmm.
in being someone with integrity, pivoted that idea from Fora to Andela and
Hmm.
carried all those investors into Andela. Imagine if he didn't have integrity. So he stumbled on the gold mine and he says, guys, and she really invested in a different business now, and let's shut it down. Like some people did to us. And let's tell them that
Hmm.
that one has failed. We found a new gold mine. Let's go and do it. And he pivoted. Farah and Adela are not doing the same thing, although they are both focused on education, they're both focused on youth, but not
Hmm.
doing two different things. But he took all those investors from Farah into Andela. So it is
Hmm.
at the selection that you can only do that, right? What about if he doesn't,
Hmm.
if he decides not to? Legally, he can declare that that entity is bankrupt
I
legally.
failed. Yeah.
And if you like, go
Hmm.
to the Supreme Court of the world, you will not win the case, right? You can only try and
Supreme
prove
Court of the world.
of the world. You can't win that case. So it's in the selection. And once you get the
Hmm.
selection right, that's the reason why great VCs are the ones that know how to pick, right? And that is
The
beyond just the
best.
science. It's beyond the science.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Now I'm beginning to bring it to a close because I'm conscious that our time is far gone, right? And I don't want to hold you longer than I should. But just a few more questions, if that's okay,
That's fine.
right? Now,
Privilege.
thank you, sir. Now, what advice would you? I mean, Wally, you've gone through a lot in your entrepreneurial journey. Some of these you've shared with us today, right? A time that you nearly went bankrupt, time that you had to bring people into your apartment, right? So your apartment became the hub, right? And these are roller coasters. I mean, these are like different ups and downs, like you rightly coined it the other time. How did you What kind of support system do you have in place, right, to ensure that you maintain your sanity? One, and what advice would you have for young people who are, just not necessarily young people, people who are starting out or trying on the entrepreneurial journey, and especially in the day and age where mental health is a big deal. Everybody's in your face trying to oppress you with, we've raised this, we've raised that, and you're beginning to feel like maybe I'm in the wrong place, maybe I'm not a success, or something like that. How have you managed it on one hand, and what advice would you have for younger people who are also setting out on this kind of journey?
Kunle, thank you so very much. This is a least discussed, not the least discussed aspect of um, startup development or venture development. A lot of people don't talk about, you know, um, the mental health of founders, and it's a big deal. I'm glad that we've seen, even though we've not had those stories a lot, and we hope that we don't have something brewing. But in my journey of in this space, especially in the tech entrepreneurship space, I have seen a handful of founders that have killed themselves, that have decided to just leave everything and walk away when they just couldn't take it anymore. Some just said, look, I'd rather not kill myself. I'd rather not lose myself. I'll just walk away from everything I'm building because I need my sanity. Sanity matters a lot, a lot. Mental health matters a lot. Because you literally in a space where people would meet you and they will tell you that what you're building is not good. The idea you're working on is lame, or it will never work, and so on and so forth. I remember one day, in between when I was running one, startup entity within in the Lofting group, I met with a bank executive. It was a group CEO of a bank in Nigeria. And I was telling him, sir, why don't you come and invest in this startup? We've raised money, we have good traction, we have good, And he said, the entire, sector that you're investing in, that you're playing in, is worth less than $20 million. The EBITDA is too small for me. I don't think I ever do anything bigger than that EBITDA. Um, of course, I think he miscalculated things. Um, because this was in health. Funny enough, this was one of my applications, in medicine and surgery, right? But I know that sector is way bigger than that. But if that was his idea, but it was a mood dampening conversation. That I can't forget that evening. He invited me to one of those, all these executives in Lagos here, they have their own private clubs, they have these places where, and he invited me to one of those places and we're having a conversation, and it was almost that evening was as if, look, you're wasting your time, this thing you're doing would not da 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 and da 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 da. And yes, even if that idea didn't work, um, or even if it did not work, just the impact of that on an entrepreneur who is sleeping and waking up and living every day of his life, to make sure that that thing works out can have severe impact on that entrepreneur. Can sometimes set you back for days. You can decide to go back in your shell and just say, look, won't I just go and look at my mate? My mate is now the regional manager at this. My mate is now earning this. Me, I'm struggling to pay rent. Me, I'm struggling to this because you're underpaying yourself. I told you, for example, how much I was paying myself when I was paying my staff. Sometimes, yeah. So I was literally paying the next person times four of what I was paying. So even if you use that in today's balance, let's even say you're paying yourself 1 million, and but because you have to keep talent, you're paying your talent 4 million. Most entrepreneurs have that sacrifice as part of their life. They will never tell you. All you're seeing is the glitter and glamour. So they're struggling, and this doesn't exempt you from bills. You have bills, school fees, you have rent. If you don't live in your own apartment, you have to keep your home running. You have to, support you have to be emotionally there for your spouse if you're married. And you're still carrying all this weight and all the weight of your staff. So you have some of them just walk away, some of them just kill themselves. I mean, it happens. And for me, I've just been tremendously lucky. Because honestly, my strength, I would say, is not in my abilities to be able to manage my mental health. But I think the fact that first I'm a Christian, um, and I spend time also relying on directives from God as a Christian matters a lot for me. Days where you are at the block road and you don't know what to do. Let me give you a story, for example. There was this particular year, and this was even in my own personal investment. So I had this business investment where I had people working for me. I was still at Love Think at the time, and we had multiple, locations for that business. And that particular year, two or three, like three different rents were due for the offices. And two out of the three landlords told me, well, you come and pack your load and go. Because I was already like 2 months. One, I was 2 months behind. One, I was like 4 months behind in rent. And so, well, come and pack. Come and leave. We cannot, no, just come and go. Da, 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 da. Two out of three. And the burden was so much that I felt like, oh my God, the business is just about to pick off. Yeah, I cannot still afford this rent. Should I just shut down? What should I do? What about the staff? What will become of them? So many things I was thinking at the same time. I just told my wife, I said, look, let's fast and pray. And I remember then it was March 1. So we said we were going to fast and pray from March 1 to March 3rd. And I'm telling you this just to share a bit of this story around how we manage some of these things. I was so overwhelmed that I had to tell my wife, like, let's fast and pray. It was first time I will, say let's fast and pray for business. Like, I mean, in the past I would just normally fast as a Christian, for business but this particular I said for 3 days. And in the first day, while we're breaking in the evening, 6 p.m., we were worshiping, and what dropped on my mind was that what I've never read before in the Bible, it- so the concept of first fruits, right? That's what we all know in the Bible. And God told me and said, go and calculate the first amount that business made. And the business runs in multiple cities. Go and calculate the amount that business made that was paid as for that business, paid by a customer into that business account, and pay that to me as first fruit. take the second amount and pay it, share it, divide it amongst your parents and your wives, your in-laws, four of them, and take the third amount, give it to your pastor as a seed. And I said, I may, I can hear him. I know when he speaks. So I told my wife, this was first day, we were just worshiping. And I told my wife, I said, this is what God said. Business couldn't even afford. Like business was
To
bankrupt.
parents.
To even rent was even literally, I was using my own money to pay salaries
Mm,
and because I'd invested several times. I mean, just struggling.
mm,
So it was a heavy
mm.
burden. Do you know when I literally did that calculation, I had to loan the business money to pay that first. Do you know that by the time I was paying the second, between the first and the second, paying that first, because it
Yeah.
took me total of like 6 months to clear this thing I was talking about. But the first
Mm,
two, first fruit and second fruit was like in space of like a month, 2 months, almost 2 months, a few,
mm.
about 6 weeks or 7 weeks. Do you know that between the first seed and the second,
See it
I
to the
had
parents.
the business had not only recovered, I was paying my rent when I was paying immediately after before I paid this the second seed. I had paid all the three rents. By the time I was paying, by the time I paid the second seed, and I was going to the third seed, I think by the time I was done paying the third seed, the business grew by 150% within the same year, in less than that 6 months that it took
Wow.
me to pay the three seeds. So
Wow.
it is only when you have those kinds of experiences that you know that your sanity is secured. Because who do you run to? You
Mm,
borrow money from friends, you've done everything, you can't meet up with expenses. There's so much that entrepreneurs are going through, but they won't tell you. Sometimes you even read
mm,
about the good works that we are doing in the paper, you don't know what we are going through underneath.
mm,
Right? So sanity for me
mm,
has been turned into my spiritual haven to draw
mm,
strength. Because again,
mm,
those are one of the that's my top way of managing it. But other ways I also manage is that I take time out once a year. Um,
mm,
and I don't do that as quality as I used to do it in the past. But I used to take time out, and I still do it though, but not just as much quality. Because then in the past 3 days, I will drop my phone behind. I'll go to a place in solitude,
mm,
and I'm just reading and writing. No
mm,
phones. I tell people around me, don't reach out to me. I I'm usually fasting again. I'll fast sometimes even all through just on
mm.
water. Sometimes I'll fast till the evening, but it's just cut myself off life and off all the noises around and just
Yeah.
reflect. Those moments, those retreats help to build the right stability, because that's when I ask myself, why am I in this?
Mm,
What am I doing? What have I not done? What are the things that are hindering me from doing,
mm,
things properly? So
mm,
taking those self retreats are also a very good way to maintain, to build the mental stamina that you need to
mm,
weather the storm, because those storms
mm,
come and go. A friend of mine was just
mm,
telling me, he used to be a customer. He was just telling me that, his staff that slept over, that he brought from Benue or so to come and work for him. So he saw this young guy that reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, I want to work for you. I like what you're doing. He brought the guy, paid for the guy, set up. The guy used to go and stay with another staff. But that day, that staff and this other guy stayed together in the office, and the guy just slept and never woke up. Imagine
wow.
all that storm, right? If you don't have the right stability, it can throw you off balance. You can even shut down the
Wow.
business and say you're not doing it again.
Mm,
I know about another person that invited him to come and speak at Ife, and a staff who was the only um son of his family came back from the US to come and do internship. Who was one coordinating all the VIPs that were doing that speaking for him. Followed us. We had an accident. All of us had an accident. We were going to speak in Ife. We moved from Lagos. We had an accident, and the only
mm,
person that died was that guy.
mm.
And as a business, you're saying, where do you start from? You're the child of another family. And
Wow.
I'm not even telling you about the money part. I'm telling you about the other things that can go wrong beyond
Yeah.
money. And I'm using those
Yeah.
extreme cases to understand what I've talked about money, but I'm just talking about all these other things that you never even, you know, think of sometimes. So there's so many things
Hmm.
that entrepreneurs go through, and mental strength is very key. And for me, it's about turning to God. For me, it's about taking time out to reflect.
Hmm.
We call it going to the balcony, to see the dance
Hmm.
floor from the balcony.
Hmm. Hmm. Thanks a
As for
lot. Thanks a
advice,
lot.
I hope that people that are listening to us can take advice from what I've said too, on how they can, manage, their own mental health through entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so because I mean you're putting it out there what you do, right? What you've done, what you've tasted, what you have handled, right? Those are the things you're sharing, and I'm sure that people can at least take a cue from these, and also articulate one or two next steps for themselves, right? Based on the things that you've shared. Because if it works for you, then it probably can work for them also. So we'll hope that they'll be able to get that. Just you know one quick question and then another one, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. The quick question is today, if you look at when you started, right, when you started really supporting, ideas and funding and all of that till date, like how many businesses would you say you have, supported in one form or the other, either through funding or some, kind of training and all of that, or, mentoring and all of that?
Wow, that is a huge one, and it can't be anything less than about 50,000 businesses.
What?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, multiple organizations. Oh, by the way, Love Think owns a we own 30% of a microfinance bank, for example. And just the fact that we support businesses on that microfinance, you can't even imagine how much people, support can come from that. Talk less of all the businesses that we support, um, programs, trainings. I've been to trainings, where you have over 1,000 people,
Wow.
and most of them are all co-founders. We've supported, even we've won contracts where we had to train in batches all around the country. We've won federal government contracts, where we had to train all around the country in batches. So
Hmm.
again, it's been a long journey coming, but can't be anything less
Johnny.
than 50,000 journey. No, 50,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well done, sir. As they say, well
Pleasure.
done, sir, for all that you do. Now, my final question to you, Ole, as we bring this to a close, is if you take this is to 2025. So if you take a look back, I say 20 years from ago, right? Or 25 years ago, and you want to think of, okay, I want to set out on this journey again, right? With everything that I know now, but I'm winding, back the hand of time, right? What are the things that you would do differently, right? Or what are the advice that you give to your younger self to say, okay, Kunle, you did it like this that time, no, but this time around, this is the way you should do it, right? Any thoughts on that?
Interesting. Very, very deep question. I think one of the things I would do differently is to manage our narrative. I think that I never really cared, and to now I'm still not very, you know, big on it. I'm just trying to make sure that I control it as much as I can now. Is controlling narrative. And for me, like everything in my life, it's just not just about me, but it's about for the ecosystem that I work for, where I play in. So many good things about this ecosystem, and if we don't tell those stories ourselves, we would continue to shoot ourselves in the foot. I'm very glad today that that storytelling had happened, and people have seen us in different light. But a lot is happening, and telling your story from your perspective is very important, and that speaks to how our culture really doesn't value, um, you know, preserving information and keeping information and shaping information. Yeah, but that's one thing that I would love to do differently. The second thing that I would probably also would love to do would be to um maybe think bigger than I've thought about in the past. So literally grab the bull by the horns. Think about the work that we do more from a global space as against just trying to being spending too much time focusing on the local. So thinking locally, right? But thinking being more conscious about it. And this in itself is a little bit tricky because the reason why a lot of African initiatives don't do well as their counterparts from developed countries is because we're solving problems in a different way. Whether we're solving different set of problems. So I don't know if you agree with me, but in Africa today, particularly in Nigeria today, if you must be successful in a space, you have to solve multiple critical challenges. You cannot solve one problem in Africa. We don't have that infrastructure. Everybody celebrates all the pay stack and all the money points. Go and look at it. Especially, let's talk about people like Money Points, and OP and all these other guys that have built very great, alternative banking today. If you hear about their stories and the kind of challenges they had to pull on the back, let's even talk about the one that is more plain into our sight, Mr. Dangote. Look at the
Mm.
battles he's facing today. Look at how he has to
Even
solve.
from
Yeah,
even from within, yeah.
yeah. After even building $20 billion refinery, he still have to figure out distribution. In a same climate, should you be the one investing in distribution again? Shouldn't people be saying, "Oh, this is an opportunity," and banks giving loans to distributors? But just look at how is political on one side, is socioeconomic on the other side. So literally, um, being conscious and maybe thinking globally and really working towards and not being drowned in local challenges.
Mm.
Um, is one way to something that I would have done more differently. Those two things particularly.
Those are very serious thoughts you have shared in closing, right? I am so tempted to ask a follow up question, but I will not, right? Um, Thank you, thanks a lot, Wally, for all that you have shared with us this evening, right? From your heart, right? With transparency, with passion, we really, really, really thank you for coming on the podcast. Um, Thank you. We can't thank you enough. Actually,
It's a
those
pleasure.
final, yeah, those final thoughts that you shared are really very thought provoking. Controlling your own narrative, right, and thinking bigger, earlier, right. So go bigger, go faster in a way, and local, as you rightly coin it, right? I mean, 1001 things we can still discuss around that, but our time is already fast spent. So let me wrap this up by saying thanks for coming once again. If you have any final words for our audience, you can take the shot now, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Kunle. It's been a thrilling conversation we've had. My final thought will be that to every change maker out there, to every innovator out there, know that you're not alone. Don't give up.
Mm,
Those challenges that you're focused on solving, they are very critical. They're
mm,
important for our survival as humans. So don't think you're wasting your time. Don't give up. Stay resilient, but also make sure that you seek knowledge. Don't
mm,
do it alone. A tree cannot make a forest. A tree cannot make a
mm,
forest. You have to reach out, open your arms, let people carry you, and let
mm,
people support you. There's a whole lot of support out there. And trust me, you can make it. You can solve that problem. You can
mm,
build that next solution that the world is waiting for.
mm,
Just keep at it, keep pushing. I wish you all the
mm.
very best.
Thank you. Thanks you. Thanks a lot.
And
Thanks a
thanks for
lot.
having me too. Thanks for having me, Kunle.
Really, really, really appreciate you coming around. I will definitely be in touch, right? And we'll pick it up from there. And hopefully, when I'm in Lagos, I will hop in and see if we can grab coffee or something.
It's a
But
pleasure, sir.
thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you on the next episode.